All right, Erik, here we are talking about effective savings rate 2.0, expanding the ultimate rate optimization metric. The listeners probably noticed that we're not on stage at FinOps X, but we're doing this over Zoom. We had some technical difficulties, but we're going to try to bring the same energy and just imagine that the audience is cheering and clapping and applauding and taking pictures and bringing lots of energy. And we're going to try to do the same here. Erik, you even brought your San Diego shirt to Zoom. So way
I
to go.
did. From my home here in Pennsylvania, I had to bring the flavor of San Diego. So here I am. Let's go.
Awesome. Let's go. All right. So just a bit about ProsperOps and me, quick 30 seconds. ProsperOps is a FinOps automation platform. We do not focus on cost visibility, but on actually automating savings outcomes for our customers. We have an amazing customer set here, including Boomi, who's presenting today. We manage over 4 billion of usage. We've delivered over 2.5 billion of savings to our customers. We work across all three major clouds, AWS, Google, and Azure. And personally, we are proud to have been an original founding vendor member of the FinOps Foundation since the beginning, and have just been involved and participating since then. It's been awesome to see the community grow. So with that, take
First
away, Erik.
off, everybody, my name is Erik Mulartrick, and I am the Boomi Grinch, which you probably have heard multiple times. I've been operating at Boomi in a FinOps role for over 6 years, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about what Boomi is up to these days. As we all know, AI agents are everywhere. It's been transformative to the industry. Well, guess what? With Boomi, you can now manage your own AI agent lifecycle through our platform. That means that you can now create agents. You can design, you can govern them, you can control them and orchestrate them and insert them into your business processes that will make non-deterministic decisions for you. This is how we unlock that hyper productivity for your organization.
Awesome. All right, let's jump in.
As we all know, there are multiple ways of optimizing a set of infrastructure in the cloud. You've got your rate optimization, which I view, and ProsperOps views, of course, as the biggest bang for the buck, the easiest way to see those outcomes. You also have workload optimization. What this means is your typical right sizing or making sure that you're architecting to be able to support in the cloud and growing up and shrinking down with your customer load. Those are typically impactful, but more hard to achieve from a results perspective.
Yep. So we're going to focus on optimize. We're big fans of both, but today, Erik, we're going to kind of drill in on this rate optimization component of the optimize phase. So a key KPI that everybody should understand regarding rate optimization is something called effective savings rate, or ESR. And this really measures the true ROI from your rate optimization efforts. This is something that Erik, you and I introduced a couple years ago. And it is very simple in concept. It can be hard to actually get at the data to calculate it, but the concept is very simple, which is how much did you actually save when all is said and done as the numerator over the denominator, which is your on-demand equivalent spend. That is, what would you have spent if you had no discounts? And so that if you can get at those two values, that will basically allow you to calculate your effective savings rate. And obviously, the higher you drive your ESR, the greater savings power you're generating. And then as that percent is applied to differing levels of spend, it's going to generate more absolute savings dollars. But ESR is an incredibly powerful metric, and we're going to talk about the evolution of it today.
Yeah, so why is it important? At the end of the day, it's how you can manage, or how you can understand the effectiveness of how well you are using rate optimization instruments in your organization. And as we mentioned, ESR gives you the ability to quantify the percentage that you are saving using those instruments. It also allows you to benchmark against each other to understand where you stand, your organization, versus other organizations. Now, your mileage may vary depending on the usage that you have underneath of operating systems, for example, but it gives you somewhere to start. And of course, you can track yourself over time to see how well you are doing.
That's exactly right. And the FinOps Foundation uses this crawl, walk, run framework as a way of kind of indicating maturity through different capabilities, which is great. What ESR does, which I think is super cool, is it makes that not a subjective self-assessment, but it makes it very objective, right? So you can measure it, and with benchmarking, you can really understand where you are in each of these phases objectively. So that's super cool.
It makes it data-driven, Erik. Thank you.
Data-driven, love it. Cool. So here you and I are, Erik, on stage, so people will get to see what we look like here on stage. Back in 2023, kind of introducing ESR for the first time. That was so fun. And if I remember correctly, we were like the second or third most popular talk that year, which is pretty fun. There's a QR code here. If anybody is watching this and hasn't seen that talk, we suggest you go back and kind of watch that one first, since we're going to build on the ESR concept. But not only that, since then, since we introduced that, we've really seen a lot of interest and uptake in people wanting to understand ESR and measure ESR. We should note that this is a completely cloud agnostic KPI, and anybody can measure it. And since then, the FinOps Foundation and the various working groups have adopted ESR as a KPI that is recommended everybody measure. There's playbooks here on the FinOps Foundation website. People can go look up if they want to understand how they can measure ESR. As part of Focus, there's Focus queries that also help you understand ESR. So really exciting to see the community embrace ESR as a standard KPI.
Yeah,
But Erik, there's even more, right?
Well, it's pretty amazing. I mean, back in 2023, when you released this metric out there, I encouraged everybody to go out and measure your ESR. Hopefully, some folks have started to do that now, given that was a couple of years ago. But guess what? There are now tools that are out there that everyone uses, or some folks may use. And those tools have started incorporating the effective savings rate as a metric. So now you can see and hopefully know what your effective savings rate is. That's foundational and exciting to me, Erik. So thank you again for releasing that.
Yeah, it's great whether you're a ProsperOps customer, a customer of these other tools that have embraced ESR, or just want to know it yourself through the various playbooks and other ways. We also make a free Google Sheet available at effectivesavingsrate.com if you want to measure your ESR on AWS specifically. But there's really lots of ways, really no reason anyone shouldn't be able to understand their own ESR. So it's really become a standard KPI. But that said, it was originally scoped purposefully to commitment-based discounts only. And what I mean by that is, if you look here on the left, you see kind of the totality of the rate optimization scope. These are all the things that you can do in cloud to rate optimize, that is, pay less for what you use. And the original focus of ESR, which we're calling ESR 1.0, was really to zero in on the commitment-based discounts only. And what that allowed you to do by design was to measure the efficacy of your commitment-based discount management efforts, independent of things like your negotiated pricing or your use of spot or any other discounts you might get, like SUDS on Google Cloud. And so what that allowed you to do is say, whether you are, one of Amazon's largest customers that has, qualifies for very high negotiated rates, or whether you're maybe a startup that doesn't have any sort of discounted, negotiated pricing, we can look at your rate optimization activities and be able to compare those and understand those and benchmark those and basically understand what good is. And so, by design, this is sort of the scope of ESR 1.0. And a couple things have happened over the past couple of years as ESR has sort of grown in popularity and evolved. So the first is, when we started, we were focused on AWS. Again, it was designed to be a cloud agnostic metric. There's nothing about ESR that is fundamentally limited to AWS. But what we learned as we expanded ESR to Google and Azure is that the way that the different cloud providers apply private pricing really matters, and kind of gets in the way of ESR 1.0 in certain ways. And unfortunately, this is only a 20-minute talk, so I don't have time to really get into those differences in detail. If anybody really wants to know, they can Slack me on FinOps Foundation Slack. But suffice it to say, the way that AWS private pricing works is that discounts stack, which means that if you're using RIs and savings plans, those discounts will apply first, and then any sort of private pricing that you have on top, will stack on top. And what that does is that gives you an insertion point where you can measure in isolation the savings from RIs and savings plans. And in fact, when you query AWS cost systems like Cost Explorer, et cetera, that's exactly how RI and SP savings are measured. They're measured upstream of any sort of private pricing. The way that Google and Azure does it is different, where the private rates and that you get, the negotiated pricing, is in some ways commingled in a way you can't extract just the savings from CUDs and savings plans and RIs on Azure in a way that the savings are the same for people that have different private pricing rates. All that to say, when we launched ESR 1.0, we thought the scope was going to be this. One of the things we learned because of the way that those discounts stack is that you can really only isolate the commitment-based discount savings for AWS only. So that was the first learning, and one of the reasons why we said, ESR needs some evolution here. The second reason is that as ESR grew in popularity, what we started to hear from the community and our customers is that it's great to know what our ESR is for our rate, our commitment-based discount management, but this is now a top-level KPI. I'm reporting this up to my finance organization or my CFO, et cetera. And we're doing all this other work like negotiating, private pricing agreements or using spot. I want to know what my kind of total all-in effective savings rate is. So in other words, I want to see these other facets of rate optimization included in scope. And so, that now leads us to introducing ESR 2.0, where we've broadened the scope. And so we now include all of the rate optimization components as part of the scope of ESR. And so now, as a FinOps practitioner, you can know you're all in ESR, all of these things. And because negotiated rates and commitment-based discounts are kind of commingled with Google and Azure, and we're including both in scope, now all of this can apply across all three clouds. Keep in mind, this does not isolate the efficacy of just your commitment-based discount management. So, your ESR may fluctuate now if you renegotiate your private pricing or you increase or decrease your use of spot. Again, it's a different scope. Both are valuable, but that is the scope of ESR 2.0. One other thing I'll mention is that because private pricing, negotiated pricing is in scope here, we can no longer really have a single benchmark like we do across customers independent of their spend. What you have to do is effectively break benchmarking into spend tiers so that you are comparing kind of apples to apples with customers that are in your relative spend zip code, so to speak. And that's, one of the services that ProsperOps provides to the community is to release benchmarking based on, all of our data. So this is something that we'll be doing as we release ESR 2.0 benchmarks, but that is sort of one of the limitations of 2.0. Okay, so we end up with the landscape looking like this. ESR 1.0, what we've historically um, measured and what people are used to, really only applicable to AWS, but still very valuable because it lets you isolate the efficacy of your commitment-based discount management. It's directly benchmarkable. We call this the RISP only scope, or 1.0. 2.0, which we call the all discount scope, applies to all three clouds, and it's benchmarkable within spend tiers. So that's the evolution of ESR 2.0. Let's take you through an example of how this works just to make it real. So we're going to look at AWS just because we can look at RISP only and all discounts. And so let's just say in this example, customers got some EC2 Fargate Lambda use. They've got a compute savings plan. They're using some spot, and they've got a negotiated discount. So in 1.0, only the top 4 rows there are in scope because we're excluding spot and negotiated discounts. And so to calculate ESR, first thing you need to do is look at your usage. That is your on-demand equivalent spend, which you would have spent with no discounts. So that's pretty easy. We just sum the first 3 rows there of on-demand equivalent spend, and you get $106,000. Next, we look at savings. To calculate that, you look at what you would have spent minus what you actually paid. So that's the 106 minus, because we have a savings plan in place here. We paid 49 to offset 70,000 of on-demand equivalent usage. So we paid 49. That offset 70 of the 106. So there's 36,000 remaining on demand. So you end up with savings of $21,000. So our ESR for the RISP only or 1.0 scope is savings over usage, which is 19.8%. So our use of savings plans in this case generated a 19.8% effective savings rate. But again, we did more than just RIs and savings plans. We also had spot and negotiated discount. So let's look at that example as well. Now you'll see all rows are in scope here. Let's rerun the calculation. Our usage now includes our use of spot. So it's the 106 plus the 10,000 in on-demand equivalent of spot, what we would have spent if we weren't using spot. So now our usage is 116. If we recalculate savings, it's the 116 minus what we actually spent, which again is the 49 for the savings plan to offset 70, plus the 36,000 of on demand, plus the 3,000 that we actually paid for spot. And then you'll notice there we're multiplying all of that times 90% because we're getting a 10% discount off of that, all of that spend. So we end up saving 36.8. And so our ESR all discount, including now spot and our negotiated discount, is 31.7%. So this is all in, all of your rate optimization activities generated a 31.7% effective savings rate off of what you would have spent if you did nothing at all. So that's
ESR. Off of
ESR.
public pricing, correct?
Yep. If you had no rate optimization at all off of public pricing, if you just came in and ran these resources at their list rates, but you didn't have that. You deployed commitment, you had a negotiated discount, you used spot, and so that's the savings rate that you generated. Make sense? All right, let's make this real. Those are some examples, Eric. Let's make it real and just talk about how ESR is kind of at work here for Boomi.
Yeah, let's go back in time. As I did a presentation like this a couple years ago, I just wanted to rehash on that a little bit. So back in the day, this is approximately April of 2022, I think it was. I was slinging savings plans and RIs all by myself. And I was happy, right? I was achieving a 26.4% effective savings rate. Not bad. Not perfect, though. There was definitely a room for opportunity. So I called up Steve Hayes and put in finally ProsperOps to take over some of the reservation management and savings plans management. When we spoke back in 2023, the number had increased substantially up to 35.3%. And at that point, I was getting pretty excited, given I had to also reduce a bunch of spend up until then. and optimized. And then lastly, most recently, the number here says 43.8, but as of May, we actually went higher than that. We got 40 up to 44%. That's profound. That is a significant increase from where we were today. And more importantly, if you want to go to the next one, it's saved us multiple millions of extra dollars that we've reinvested in the business. And it saved me a bunch of time that I was spending on managing these things myself. And also it shows that it could do it much better than I could.
That's so awesome. We love seeing this for our customers. Okay, this is your AWS footprint, Erik, but we're also going to talk about now your Azure footprint.
Azure, yes. Now,
Yeah.
AWS is Boomi's preferred cloud service provider. However, for customers that have great synergies with Azure and need a Azure footprint, we also have some workloads there. And when we started, and this is recent, this is only a few months ago,
Yeah, earlier this year.
We were using another service provider to manage our RIs and savings plans within our Azure footprint. And we started out around 28.9% and 38.1%. Well, as we fast forward, I know these numbers say April 2025, but I just looked. The first one went up to above 50%, and the second one reached 46%, and that's only in a few months, which is very profound.
Incredible.
And as I mentioned, we were using a provider previously for it. So that, again, has generated significant savings for us that we've been able to reinvest in the business. So again, thank you for coming out with this service.
Yeah. And again, the cool thing about ESR is that, as you mentioned, we're using a previous provider. As you debate different options, like, should I do this myself? Should I use provider A? Should I use provider B? The cool thing about effective savings rate is it makes it a very objective assessment. It doesn't need to be subjective. You don't have to go off of, claims, but you can actually look at the data and just understand quantifiably which delivers the greatest savings outcome. So that, again, is the really powerful thing about effective savings rate.
Yes. So
All right.
the whole story, as I'd like everybody to ask themselves, have you been requested from a senior executive member or a board member to provide what your overall CPU utilization is across your fleet of systems? My guess is that probably resonates with some like it did with the audience. But this actually happened to me. I was requested to pull together some metrics from a senior executive about what our overall CPU utilization is across the entire fleet that we had. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, man, like that could be a really dirty thing to provide, or it could be something that I could turn around and show that, hey, actually, I know what you're probably asking. You want to see how well we're utilizing our resources. Well, guess what? We're a very spiky workload where we exist today. But we also have to layer in some of the rate optimization that we've done, because I could be using something that is, a T3 micro in AWS that's sitting at, I don't know, 100%, right? And that shows that it's good utilization. But in reality, my M5.16 extra larges could be sitting out there completely idle. You've got to bring together some of the costs, because those two things cost significantly different in terms of costs. So you got to bring them both together, though, and tell the story that, hey, yes, we have spiky workloads, but we're also getting a significant discount compared to list price of, if you want to fast forward there, 54% off of public pricing when you combine all of the usage that we have being spot usage and the instruments and if we had a private pricing agreement, of course, that would all be included within the overall metric. So you got to tie them together. You can't just look at one in a vacuum, because it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so the question is that good? We've shown a lot of various ESRs here today, and an example and kind of ESRs for Boomi kind of in the real world. This is kind of your real ESR data here, but is that good? I mentioned earlier, one of the things ProsperOps does as a service to the FinOps community is we take all of the data from, the 4 billion of usage we have under management, and, all of the customers that we serve, or all the customers that we evaluate. We anonymize all of that data and we make it available to the community, so you can understand objectively where you are on a percentile basis in that crawl, walk, run maturation of your commitment-based discount management activities. Just earlier this year, we released Google Cloud Compute ESR benchmarks. There's a QR code here if for any Google Cloud customers, if you want to understand, your how your ESR compares. This would be very interesting data for you to take a look at some of those insights. And then kind of announcing here at FinOpsX the fact that we will be releasing and updating, we do this every year, our AWS Compute RISP only. So this is 1.0 data. This is going to be available in Q3 of 2025. So here in the next couple months. And then for the first time, we're also going to be releasing our RDS, Elasticache, OpenSearch, Redshift, and MemoryDB RISP only data. Also will be made available in Q3 2025. We have to collect enough data to make sure we have, a sufficient sample size before we release this. So we're collecting data on all of these things, 1.0, 2.0, and once we've got sufficient data, we make it available. So look for that, those updates, and then the AWS non-compute for the first time here shortly. Erik.
Oh man, yeah. Here, let's do it again.
I snuck this slide in.
What?
This is the slide you just produced. You said you were up to 43.8, and what are you now, above 44, I think?
We've achieved above 44. Yes.
Okay, so this is maybe a tad higher, but I asked our team for your 43.8 using the to be released AWS RISP only benchmarks, where does Boomi sit in that? And I'm proud to tell you the answer is you were in the 95th, maybe now the 96th percentile.
What?
So that means
get out of here.
Of 100 optimizers, you're in the top 4 to 5%. So
wow,
congratulations. Pretty cool.
Erik, thank you. That's mind-boggling. Thank you for sharing that information with me. I can tell you, back when we did this exercise originally, the 26.4% back in 2023, that was about 80th percentile. I'm actually curious, and we'll find out, where does that rank today? Yeah. Thank you, Erik. That's just amazing.
Yes. And I believe the audience cheered here at this point. So if we're doing anything in post, feel free to add some cheering.
Yeah.
Okay. In Steve Jobs fashion, one more thing as we wrap here. We focused today on rate optimization KPIs. ESR allows you to quantify rate optimization, but as we mentioned, we're big fans of both rate and workload optimization. Erik, in his board request example, talked about the need to bring these two together. It's great to be able to quantify rate, but there's more to optimization than just rate. There's also workload. So one of the things that we've recently announced, and want to make sure everyone is aware of, is the fact that we've now put forth a companion metric to effective savings rate for workload optimization called the effective avoidance rate. It's very similar in concept, but allows you to quantify and measure your workload optimization efforts. And now we've got one for rate, one for workload. Kind of to answer your board question, Erik, right now you've got to stitch all of that together. What we have also introduced is a metric that combines those two and sits on top, called your effective cost optimization rate, or ECOR, and it unites these two together into a single KPI. So there's work to do on these to kind of work through them. There's some things we need the community to agree upon, but we've put forth the concepts, and we look forward to working with the FinOps Foundation community to kind of refine and solidify these like we've done with ESR. And I think if we can get all of this in place, we can really create a framework to quantify the totality of rate optimization. So exciting future ahead. So with that, We're done. Appreciate everyone listening.
Yeah, I didn't drop in the what's your ears? I said something like that at the end of
Oh
it.
yeah.
All good.
Give us your ears. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear your ear and your e-core.
But yep. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps X 2025 content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.